Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today. So we're going to talk obviously about the big story that came out last night. And I'm almost a little bit late talking about this one because it did come out last night. And I've kind of been thinking about sort of my opinions and theories on this, because I know a lot of people have a lot of contrasting theories and opinions on this one. First of all, it's a really sad story, and that is, of course, Samoa Joe has vacated the NXT Championship. It was announced late last night over here in the UK that Samoa Joe has vacated the NXT Championship due to injuries. Now, Joe released a video on Twitter yesterday evening announcing that he was relinquishing the NXT Championship after WWE Medical informed him that due to certain injuries, he will have to step away from the ring for a brief amount of time. This was his full yet brief statement saying, quote, "Recently, WWE Medical has informed me that due to certain injuries, they'd like to have me step away from the ring for a brief but indeterminate amount of time. I realize this week we are on the cusp of a new NXT, we are on the brink of a new era in our history, and that era deserves a fighting champion. That's why it makes a difficult decision very easy to make. Effective immediately, I relinquish the NXT Championship. Best of luck to those who will vie for it. My sincerest condolences to whoever wins, because I will be along shortly to recollect what is mine." Now, Joe just won the NXT Championship, of course, at NXT TakeOver 36 after he defeated Karrion Kross. And look, it was very surprising, really, really surprising. Again, the news kind of came out of nowhere last night. I know there was some rumblings on social media just prior to it going, there's a big NXT story coming, and a lot of people, myself included, went, here we go again, because that's what we've heard time and time again over the course of the last few months. So, like everyone, I didn't really know what to expect, but I certainly didn't see this. There is a lot of contrasting thoughts and opinions on this one. So there's lots of discussion, as is the case of pro wrestling, about what is this legitimate? Is this real? What's kayfabe? What's reality? What's storyline? What's fiction? And I can see both sides of it. I can see both sides of this one. I think both sides of it do have a lot of merit to it. The people that are saying that none of this is real and none of this is legitimate, or they're just finding a reason to get the title off of Samoa Joe, that does hold merit in some circles, because you look at it and, like Joe said, there's a revamp of NXT coming this coming Tuesday. It's the new version of NXT, the revamped version of NXT. You can see the new logo there on the screen behind me. It's got new graphics, a new setup. They've been working on the Capitol Wrestling Center, the Performance Center, for the last couple of weeks with a new stage setup, new music, new graphics, new direction for NXT as well. We've heard about the philosophy and ethos of NXT changing in terms of recruitment, who WWE are looking for to feature on that NXT brand. They're looking to move away from independent professional wrestlers. They're looking to move more towards professional sports background, former NFL players, former NBA players, former hockey players, former models, former fitness models, strongmen, that kind of stuff that WWE traditionally in the mid-2000s, when they had OVW, FCW, etc., what they were kind of looking for that, to trying to step away from signing guys from Ring of Honor, from Impact Wrestling, from MLW, from the independent pro wrestling scene. They're moving away from that, and they're also moving back towards a developmental system where the NXT product features younger superstars that don't have that indie background. So they're looking for guys and girls that are in their 20s. They don't really want to sign people that are over 30 years of age, and it would make sense from that perspective of, well, Samoa Joe just isn't what they're looking to feature on NXT right now, right? That would make sense. The guy's in his 40s. He's an ex-indie guy. He's pretty beat up, shall we say. He's had injuries. He's just come back from an injury. He's obviously got concussion issues, etc., etc. Given that this is a revamp, given this is a new era for WWE and NXT, it doesn't make sense from their point of view to have Samoa Joe as the NXT champion. So a lot of people are looking at that going, something just doesn't pass the smell test here. This looks like a revamp, and with the revamp, they want a champion that's younger and in more in line with the vision and ethos that they have. So that's what a lot of people are saying. A lot of people are going, BS, he just got cleared. How did he get injured again? The other side of it, when people are saying, well, this is legitimate, is by, I see people saying, well, when did he get injured? He's only wrestled like one match. How has he been injured since? Yes, he's been a bit physical on NXT, but how did he get injured? When did he get injured in the last couple of weeks? Well, it is a performance center. It is a training area. Who's to say that Samoa Joe, whilst he's come back or been in the process of his comeback in the last couple of weeks at the performance center, who's to say he didn't get injured once again then? Who's to say that whilst he wanted to get his legs back underneath him and he wanted to get his win back and he was working in either tryout matches or working in just matches again to get some of that ring rust off, who's to say that he didn't have another concussion, or who's to say that he didn't get hurt during the last couple of weeks at the Performance Center? That's a possibility as well. And also, one would think that when he re-signed with WWE, and this is the speculation on my part, I don't know this to be accurate or not, but one would imagine that when he made the deal to come back with the company, I'm sure there was a thing put in place of, okay, we are going to keep working towards clearing you to wrestle again because we know that's what you want to do. But a bit like with Daniel Bryan, when he first came out of retirement for WWE, when they medically cleared him, rather, it was a case of after every match he had to do concussion tests, or he had to do weekly concussion tests, all that kind of stuff. Who's to say that that isn't the case with Samoa Joe and he's just done another concussion test and he's failed? Again, I don't know that to be accurate, but that could be a situation as well whereby they go, look, Joe, you just did your weekly concussion test and once again, we're seeing problems. We're seeing problems again that weren't there a couple of weeks ago. I don't know. It's very, very shocking. And to be honest with you, I would love to give you an answer of where I land on either side of the fence here as to, is this a work or is this reality? The answer is I really don't know. I really don't know. I can absolutely see the side of it where they've said, look, Joe, we wanted you to come back to wrestle. That was always part of the plan. And we have cleared you to compete. But at the end of the day, there is a direction that we're looking for when it comes to NXT and the revamped version of NXT. And that doesn't have you as the NXT champion. You've got this hybrid role now anyway, where you will occasionally wrestle and you will occasionally work on the NXT brand as an active wrestler. But also, again, we saw it during SummerSlam weekend. He was at the Las Vegas tryouts. He's working behind the scenes in terms of talent acquisition and recruitment and working those tryouts. Who's to say that they had a conversation of, look, we're going to have you come back and you're going to work against Karrion Kross. You're going to be the vehicle to get the title off of Kross. But then we're going to have you vacate the belt, and then we're going to have someone else pick it up for this new version of NXT going forward. You will have matches against that person, but they will beat you. I could see that point of view. My argument would be, if you wanted to make a statement and you wanted to put over a younger talent or establish a new talent, why wouldn't you have them just defeat Samoa Joe on one of the early episodes of NXT? It doesn't have to be this Tuesday, but an upcoming Tuesday episode. Why couldn't you have just done it then? If you're always had the ambition to have Joe drop the belt pretty quickly, you could have just done that on an episode of NXT. Just one, for making someone, but two, I mean, you're desperate for ratings because the ratings aren't that great on Tuesday. Surely a title change and a title match would do just that. That would get ratings. That's what you're looking for USA Network and NXT on Tuesday night. So why wouldn't you just do that? So I don't know if I go into that kind of reality of, oh, they just didn't want the title on him, so they told him to vacate it. I think to be honest with you, I think there's probably, like in anything in life, when it comes to where is the reality in this story, especially in the world of pro wrestling, I think the reality probably is somewhere in between. I could see a scenario whereby, again, Joe has to do these weekly tests or regular tests, etc., or he was working out, having a practice match, whatever, at the Performance Center, and something bad happened, and it was a case of, I'm a little bit banged up, or, look, we made this agreement in place to clear you in the first place, that if you couldn't pass a test, you'd have to sit on the shelf until you could pass a test again. That's just the situation. And because of that, you have to vacate the championship. To be honest with you, you weren't going to hold the belt for that long anyway, because the plan always was to get it off you to move it on to someone else younger that could carry the brand going forward, or we wanted to establish. We know at this point that Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, they're not actively producing NXT week to week to week to week, but at the same time, reportedly, Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, the higher-ups that produce Raw and SmackDown, they are broad-stroking NXT in the sense of saying, look, we want you to push this person. We want you to get this guy ready. This is the character we have in mind for this guy, for the main roster. That's what he's got to be doing in NXT as well. And you could certainly see them saying, look, Joe's gone down with an injury. He's gone down with an injury. Fine. If he's gone down with an injury, then take the title off him. He wasn't going to hold it that long anyway. If he is legitimately injured once again, which I do think is part of it. I think it's just kind of forced the issue here. Then that sucks. That absolutely sucks. The guy just got cleared. And part of the problem was before he had this big amount of time out of the ring anyway, part of the problem was that he was getting hurt anyway. Joe was having he had a thumb injury. I think he's had a multitude of injuries, especially in his sort of years prior to even transitioning into commentary. He was out of action for 3 months here, a couple months here. Had like a groin injury or a muscle injury or this or this or this or this. And there was already rumors about Joe, wasn't there, going back to like 2018, around that period of time of Vince loves him. Vince is actually a big fan of him and he wishes he got him earlier, but he's injury prone. And there was a feeling that he was injury prone. Again, because this is a guy that's not in his prime. Joe's obviously not in his prime. His prime was a long, long, long time ago. I even remember during his final days in Impact, they were saying the problem is that Joe isn't in his prime anymore. And that was a long time ago then, let alone now. So the feeling was a couple of years ago that he was injury prone. My hope is that it's got nothing to do with the concussions, because I think if it's got something to do with the concussions, then we might have a bigger problem on our hands, and then it becomes a big long period of time where he's not working again. He just overcome all of that to get back. I would prefer that it was just like a muscle injury, or he's got a bad groin, or he's pulled his bicep, or just something like that. I know I don't want to wish injury on anyone, but I would prefer it to be that than a concussion-related issue again, because we're right back to where we started before, and it's that frustration over and over and over again. So I think that, again, and I don't know, we don't know if this is a work or if it's a shoot or not. My gut feeling is that it's somewhere in between. That maybe it is a bit of a knock and he would be on the shelf for a couple of weeks or like a month or something like that. And they've gone, you know what? He doesn't fit what we're looking for anyway right now. No disrespect to Joe. It's a revamped version of NXT. And let's get a bit of steam behind this and let's crown a new champion. We were going to do that anyway by having Joe drop the championship in a couple of weeks' time. Why don't we just vacate it and then we can... Maybe the match on Tuesday, that number one contenders match, turns into a title match. I wouldn't be surprised with that. And then once again, that leads into people saying, well, that was going to be a number one contenders match anyway, and now suddenly it becomes a title match. That lines up pretty well with the theory of maybe he's not hurt. So we don't know, but it sucks. I think a lot of people were excited for Joe getting back in the ring and wrestling regularly, semi-regularly again, and competing for that or holding that championship, and we haven't got that. And this revamped version of NXT already has a little bit of, it doesn't seem right behind it. You know what I mean? And I think that's frustrating. That's very frustrating. But ultimately, we have to hope that Joe gets well soon, recovers soon, and gets back in the ring soon. But it's incredibly frustrating for him, obviously, and it's incredibly sad. As someone who's a big Samoa Joe fan, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. Some other things I do want to talk about, one being Sami Zayn. Obviously, a big story last week was Kevin Owens. His contract expiring in January 2022 with the expectation that he's going to be leaving WWE, assumably to sign with AEW in January of next year. A lot of discussion then became about Sami Zayn, his best friend Sami Zayn, and his WWE contract. Of course, he's got links with people in AEW as well. And Sami Zayn's WWE contract is set to expire before the end of the year. This is according to the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter. Now, the exact date it expires is still unknown. Zayn first signed with WWE back in 2013. Now, this comes after word of Kevin Owens' WWE contract expiring in January of 2022 and not early 2023 as originally thought. The Wrestling Observer newsletter noted the exact date of Kevin Owens' WWE contract expiring is January 31st, 2022. Word within WWE, as I mentioned, is the expectation is that Owens will not be sticking around and instead heading to AEW to be with his friends, the Young Bucks and Adam Cole. The group was formerly known as Mount Rushmore during their times on the independent scene. Sami Zayn going to AEW, I think, is just as much of a lock as Kevin Owens going there, to be honest. And it's, again, that's partially, of course, it's due to the links that he has with people there, like the Young Bucks, like even 2.0. Not that they have positions of power, but that group that's there, that faction, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, etc. Of course, they have links. They have links with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. And to be honest, when the rise of AEW came, a lot of people just thought it's inevitable. that. Now, maybe not Kevin Owens, because I think a lot of people thought, he's loyal to WWE, he's loyal to Vince McMahon. It's where he's always wanted to be. But I think if you looked at people like Sami Zayn, I think a lot of people thought it's inevitable that he'll go to AEW, because there certainly is a ceiling. There's an absolute ceiling for Sami Zayn in WWE. And, Kevin Owens was a bit of a different one, but I think even with Kevin Owens at this point, the general feeling is he's done everything he can do. There's not a lot more he is going to be able to do. He's not going to get a WrestleMania main event. He's not probably even going to get another World Championship opportunity in WWE. It's just not going to happen, or World Title run, I should say, not an opportunity, because I think he can step into that main event picture whenever he wants. I think he can be a WWE champion whenever he wants. He could pull it off tomorrow if they put him in that position, but I don't think they will. Sami Zayn, it's different. We know his capabilities as a babyface. We now know his capabilities as a heel as well, which I think previously people didn't even know he had in him. I don't even think he knew he had that in him. But now we know he can easily do both. He can be that underdog, lovable babyface. He can be that just annoying, frustrating, entertaining heel. He can do it both. I think he's become a much more well-rounded character and performer during his time with WWE, but he's only going to be Intercontinental Champion. He's just not going to be Universal Champion. He's not going to be WWE Champion. That's not because he can't do it. That's not because he can't pull it off. He can. But obviously, Vince McMahon has his perception of Sami Zayn. It's at a certain level. He has a ceiling. If that's the case with Sami Zayn, he can either be content with that ceiling, or he can say, you know what? I think I can be world champion. I think I can be higher up on the card. I think I can compete in main events of pay-per-views and TV specials. And he's more likely to get that opportunity in AEW. And even if he's not, I think it comes to a point of, okay, if I'm only ever going to get to a certain level in my career, I might as well be having fun while I'm doing it. And I might as well have some creative input into what I'm doing. And Sami Zayn certainly is very much an artist in what he does. If you hear him talk in interviews, he's very much a big student of creativity and having input in what you're doing. And obviously, he's just not going to get that in WWE. I think that's a fact at this point. So I think it's highly likely he'll go. And look, if his contract expires before the end of the year as well, we're looking at more names going over. And I know that the weird knock on AEW at this point is, how are you going to get him in? How are you going to fit them all on the roster? Isn't that a positive problem to have? And if that blows up in AEW's face, it blows up in their face. But are these names going to go back to WWE? Probably not. Probably not. And they'll just get more programming. They'll get more programming and they'll figure it out. Or if not, they'll say, you know what, Sammy, we don't have anything for you for the next couple of months. Why don't you work with New Japan? Because, of course, he would want to. Why don't you work with one of these other companies we've got links to? There's lots of different ways around these kind of issues. And I think Sami Zayn is obviously, if put it this way, if you said who's more likely to go, if the feeling is that Kevin Owens is definitely going to AEW, I would still say Sami Zayn is far more likely to go because I think that's the case, because I think he's found his ceiling, and I think that would probably be the case of him. So I think that is what that is. And look, before the end of the year, we could see Sami Zayn, Bray Wyatt, and Ric Flair still to sign with AEW, and next year comes Kevin Owens too, or Kevin Steen. What Sami Zayn would be playing in AEW, do I think it would be El Generico? Probably not. I think it would be something different, but we'll have to wait and see. But I think Sami Zayn is going to be one of the next names to go from WWE to AEW. Speaking of names that went from WWE to AEW, Bryan Danielson. This is a really fascinating report. We heard those reports previously about Daniel Bryan and the negotiations he had with WWE and AEW. One of the big sticking points is that he wanted to be able to work outside of WWE. He wanted to work with New Japan. And reportedly, Vince McMahon was willing to let Bryan Danielson work the G1 Climax. Now, although AEW was able to match WWE's offer to Bryan Danielson, WWE pushed hard for a long-term deal and the ability to work in New Japan. According to the latest Observer newsletter, Vince McMahon himself apparently gave Danielson permission to work the G1 Climax tournament, a lengthy round-robin tournament in Japan that would have taken the former WWE superstar away for about a month or longer to follow current quarantine regulations. It was speculated that McMahon may not have been aware of what the tournament actually was, though, when he gave Danielson the okay, which I think is a possibility. Certainly is a possibility. Vince McMahon probably just thought it was a date as opposed to many dates over the course of a month or so. WWE President Nick Khan was attempting to work an exclusive deal with New Japan around this period of time, which prompted AEW President Tony Khan to speed up talks and get a deal going with New Japan. Over the last few months, we've seen the likes of both of AEW and New Japan talent showing up in each promotion. Most recently, you had Minoru Suzuki face Jon Moxley in the main event of last Wednesday's edition of Dynamite. Both WWE and AEW offered similar money, with WWE giving limited dates, a big guarantee, and allowing Bryan Danielson to work outside of the company. The AEW offer was said to be similar. But the big reason for Danielson's switch was said it would be the best thing for the wrestling industry as a whole. He hoped that WWE would be more open to sending talent to Japan in the future to prove themselves in the ring. Also, making AEW more competitive helps talent another place to earn good money, creative freedom in and out of the ring, whilst also giving fans a strong alternative to WWE. As far as the yes chants go, Danielson will likely veer away from prompting them, like in his WWE entrance, where he points his fingers up to the air as he made his way to the ring. If organic chants start up with the fans, he's not going to push back. Danielson has reportedly signed a 3-year deal with All Elite Wrestling. So the big story was that McMahon reportedly said that Bryan Danielson could be in that G1 Climax. Again, I have doubts as to what McMahon really truly does know about that tournament. Two, I know that Bryan Danielson is a really big fan and has a great relationship reportedly with Vince McMahon. I just don't know and maybe this was the case with Bryan, I don't know, this is speculation on my part, but in his heart of hearts, did he genuinely believe what Vince McMahon was telling him to be true? You know, Vince going, of course, yeah, I'll let you work the tournament in Japan. But when push comes to shove, would he? If that was written, you know, I'd say, well, put it in writing. Because if he promises you, look, we've heard it time and time again, about promises that Vince McMahon has made to people about working outside dates, and it just not happening. And reportedly, it was a case of Nick Khan going, well, if we want to work with you, New Japan, we want exclusive rights to work with you. We want to be the only company that works with you. We want exclusivity. And I think New Japan went, no, we're working with multiple companies at this point. We're working with AEW and Impact, and whilst working with you might be beneficial, we know that it would be one-sided, and we know that you might change that relationship, and we like what we've got right now. Why would we want to change that? And I think that's probably what it came down to too. And Bryan noting that he wants what's best for the pro wrestling industry, I think is a fair point too. And we're seeing this point now. AEW is leveling up. And I know people get angry with that and they'll say, well, Raw still has more viewers on Monday night and SmackDown has far more viewers on Friday night. Well, first of all, they've got far more longevity over AEW. Two, SmackDown's on network television. It should be outdrawing Dynamite. If it doesn't, there's a massive problem there. And AEW's only been around for a couple of years. My argument would be give it time. We see how things are trending. Raw, ultimately, I know it goes up and down, but Raw ultimately is trending downwards. AEW is trending upwards. At some point, it's going to cross. We know it's going to cross at some point. It's inevitable, unless WWE changes things. And I think that Bryan is saying, in this case, look, I'm happy to lift AEW up, but I'm also to do it because maybe me leaving will change WWE. I don't see that until really WWE gets hurt in the pocket, but time will tell when it comes to that. Speaking of WWE changing things, though, the WWE Championship match originally scheduled for Extreme Rules is now taking place tonight on Raw, because the match between Randy Orton and Bobby Lashley has been moved from Extreme Rules to tonight's episode on the USA Network. WWE previously announced a title match of Orton and Riddle defending the Raw Tag Team Championships against Lashley and MVP on the episode of Raw from Boston tonight. It was also announced that Orton versus Lashley for the WWE Championship would take place at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view on September 26th. But suddenly, in a commercial that aired during the Super SmackDown episode on Fox on Friday, Lashley vs. Orton was announced for a WWE Championship match during tonight's episode of Raw. There was no mention of the tag team match or the Extreme Rules match, which again is just hilarious, I find, because they announce these things for Raw, and at this point, whatever they announce, you might as well just make no example of. You might as well just go, that's just not going to happen. Why? Because it never happens. It never happens. It never happens. Whatever they announce just doesn't happen, and they change it every single time. Now, according to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer radio show, WWE Chairman Vince McMahon allegedly made the changes to tonight's show in response to AEW Dynamite beating Raw in the key 18-49 demographic last week. This is what Meltzer said, quote, "They moved the pay-per-view match to Raw. Originally, they were going to do the tag team title match. The whole show last week was built up to set up this tag team title match on this week's Raw. Then they pulled the match because they lost in the ratings, and they're putting Randy Orton and Bobby Lashley be the pay-per-view main event on TV tomorrow night. Yeah, that's among the responses to AEW. I'm not surprised. It's a good point in the sense of they spent 3 hours building up to that tag team title match last week and they're not doing it now, which again is kind of hilarious because it just goes to show that, okay, last week's episode of Raw didn't matter. It just didn't matter. And what kind of... I know that, again, it might be a response of, okay, we're trying to react to AEW's strong demographic rating, not viewership rating, because they didn't beat Raw in the viewership. They beat them in the demo. But... you could argue, okay, they're responding to that. They're putting the WWE Championship match on free television. That's a positive response. But you can look at it two ways. You can go, well, it's a positive response because they're giving us a more meaningful episode tonight on Raw. But also now, if you're a viewer that watched last week, you're conditioned to think, well, what I'm watching tonight maybe doesn't matter. Because you spent 3 hours building up a Raw Tag Team title match that now doesn't matter. So I wasted my time last week. Who's to say I won't waste my time this week by watching it? You know what I mean? It's stuff like that that really puts viewers off, in my opinion. So, and again, this is Meltzer. So Meltzer saying that, look, they're responding to AEW. We don't know. And people will say that's just Meltzer talk. Maybe it is just Meltzer talk. Maybe that's his opinion. Who knows? But... look, the episode of Dynamite last week did very well, obviously. Did over 1.3 million viewers, the second highest in the history of the show. 681,000 of that number was in the 18 to 49 demographic, and a 0.53 rating, which beat out Monday Night Raw just this past week. And it's very strong. That's very strong. And I don't know if the war is particularly on at this point, but... it'll be interesting to see when it comes to Dynamite if that was just a post-pay-per-view bump, which it might have been, or if that's the new standard for AEW now, with Adam Cole, with Bryan Danielson, with CM Punk, and with other names to come in the future, Bray Wyatt, Ric Flair, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, with those names to come, you would think, logically, it's only going to get higher. If each person coming in is moving up just a point, then you're not going to be a million miles off. And we know, coming into the fall, Raw traditionally doesn't do well. It's got strong competition now. Monday Night Football's back. And I think WWE might be thinking, you know what? Not just the AEW thing, but tonight's going to be the first Monday Night Football of the season, right? They're going to be thinking, we might be in a bit of trouble. Yes, it's a response to AEW, but it's also a response to the numbers have been okay since coming back on the road, but traditionally, as we get into the fall, especially as we get into the winter, Raw just dies a death. And considering the competition on Wednesday nights is rising, maybe it's a problem. And look, if it changes WWE's booking in terms of putting better stuff on Raw, then absolutely it's a good thing. But I still expect to get a non-finish tonight and get the same match at Extreme Rules. I think that's going to be the case. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these WWE news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. It really does help us out here on YouTube, gut the rankings, and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or how you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.